For anyone looking to get the new Opel Astra Electric, you're going to have to look a bit closely to differentiate it, because it looks pretty much the exact same as all of the other Astra models. You get that visor grille across the front, finished in black. It works very nicely with the black elements in the lower section of the bumper. This is the kind of sportier bumper that Opel does on this car, and those black elements tie in with contrasting black door mirrors and of course the two-tone roof, which really sets this car apart in the segment. Not a lot of cars in this part of the market have that kind of a setup. It also sits on aero-optimized 18-inch wheels. They look very, very stylish, and that size wheel is a good balance between looking good and still being fairly efficient overall. We'll show you the inside in a moment, but we come around the back, you can see you've got this large spoiler section across the back. It does get a wiper on there. You've got the Astra name spelled out, black Opel logo, and a small E there to signify that this is the electric version. Part of the design that makes this really kind of stand out is we see those very slim lights there, and they form with this third brake light up top, they form that compass design that Opel has on its cars. There's a couple of important things about this car though. First of all, it's the battery. It's got a 54 kilowatt hour battery. That's a little bit bigger than we see on some other cars in that segment. That gives it a driving range of 418 kilometers in WLTP. That's pretty good. It's going to be enough for what most people need on a day-to-day basis. On top of that, there's a 156 horsepower electric motor driving the front wheels. Again, good balance of power with efficiency. Earlier today, we've been driving this, we've seen figures as low as 12 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. It's going to be an efficient car, but let's have a look inside and show you what the rest of it's like. If you've not seen the inside of an Opel Astra in a while, you might be surprised by how this looks. This is a very modern layout inside. It's got a dual screen setup with a fully digital instrument display in front of you and a nice decent sized touchscreen on this side in the center console, which we're very pleased to see is also paired with an angled bank of buttons with all the shortcuts you're going to need. So when you need to make the cabin hotter, cooler, you can easily do that on the touch of a button. Equally, you've got a top row of buttons for all the other features, such as a heated steering wheel, a heated windscreen, heated seats. This car comes very well equipped. You can get a lot of equipment in this car, which a lot of people are going to like. Elsewhere, what have you got? Well, you've got a full color head-up display, which admittedly you can't see right now, but it's very, very good. It gives you all your mapping information, navigation turn by turn, and all the usual speed and road information you're going to need presented right in your eye line. Other than that, you've got a fairly wide center console here with two cup holders here, another big storage area here, 12-volt socket, USB sockets, wireless charging port. They kind of thought of almost everything in this car. There's even a opening butterfly style here, center console, cubby hole if you want to put more items in there. Probably the only thing I don't like about the interior is this kind of glossy piano black material, which is very susceptible to scratching and marking. That's the only kind of thing that we're going to have to mark the interior down on this for. There's a familiar toggle switch here, which a lot of the Stellantis cars now use for their drive selector, so going forward to reverse, it's very simple. You've also got different drive modes that you can select too, so if you want to have normal, eco, or maybe a little bit of a sportier drive to get the most out of that electric motor. When you're driving with a bit more enthusiasm, these AGR certified seats do a very good job of holding you in place. They're very, very comfortable, all the right support in all the right places. But let's have a look in the back seats and see what it's like there. Rear seat passengers aren't going to be short on space in here as well. One of the nice things is that this has been designed from the ground up to be an electric car, so it means all that battery is sandwiched in the floor itself. It doesn't eat into any of the passenger space. I've got room to get my feet in underneath the seat in front if I do want to stretch out a little bit more, and I've got a very good amount of knee room still left, given that this driving seat is set up for my usual driving position, and I'm about 5'8", so give you an idea, fairly average height. I can still fit in here very, very comfortably, and I've still got a lot of headroom left there as well. So it's going to be very comfy to be in these two outer seats. The middle seat, admittedly, it's never going to be as comfortable as the two outer seats, but it is a generous enough width in the Astra that you will be able to get 3 people in here in relative comfort for relatively long journeys without too much complaint. Yes, there is a small hump in the floor here in the middle, and you do have a center console to contend with, so you are going to have to put your feet on either side. The upside is when you're not using that, you do still have a USB charge port in here, and you've got ventilation in the back, so whoever is sitting back here will still be able to get a little bit more benefit from the aircon. When that middle seat's not in use, you do also have a fold down armrest. You can put some bits and pieces in here, 2 cup holders, and there's access into the boot as well. Speaking of which, the boot capacity is 352 litres, which is a pretty decent amount for this kind of category of car. Admittedly, not as big as some other models, but 352 litres will be enough for most people. And you can also fold down the rear seats to have a 60-40 split. So if you do need to load in any bigger items, it's easy enough to do so. It won't come as much of a surprise when I tell you that the Opel Astra Electric is both very smooth to drive and very quiet. To be fair, even the petrol version of the Astra is a pretty refined car. Moving to electric, well, it just makes it very nice to drive. There's really no wind noise, even at motorway speeds, and the suspension is also quite nicely set up. It soaks up everything quite nicely, has enough firmness in it to deal with sportier driving, but it's not uncomfortable to drive around town when you're going to be going over speed bumps and cracked roads and things like that. Part of that is also helped by the fact that the Astra Electric doesn't weigh any more than the plug-in hybrid version, which is just over about 1,600 kilograms. Now, that's a pretty reasonable weight for an electric car, given that we've a huge number of electric SUVs that aren't really a whole lot bigger than this, but weigh upwards of 2,000 kilograms. So it's good that the weight is down, and that's really a big factor in this car because it also contributes to the car's overall efficiency. Yes, it's got a 54 kilowatt hour battery and a 156 horsepower electric motor, which has, incidentally, 270 newton meters of torque. That means it doesn't have to work all that hard to pull this car along. Opel quotes a combined consumption figure of 14.8 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers in a combined WLTP cycle. But driving around the city at slower speeds and with more start-stop traffic with opportunity to regen and harvest energy back into the battery, so far today has seen that figure on the trip computer, at least on this car, drop to 13.1 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And in fact, earlier on in the day, it was even lower, hovering around 12.2. So that's very respectable for an electric car of this size. And off the line, it does get away quite quickly. It's certainly no slouch. There's enough performance there to satisfy most people. The calibration of the steering leaves no cause for complaint either. It's a pretty nice direct feel to it. It's not overly weighted even when you switch into the sport mode, and it's light enough to make it very easy to maneuver the Astra around town in tighter confines such as parking spaces or in traffic. If you do want to drive with a little bit of enthusiasm, just switch over to the sport mode. You don't get any extra sound, but you do get a much sharper pickup in acceleration. And that does make this Astra a little bit more fun to drive than you might think. You do get a battery or a B mode on the drive select to engage a higher level of energy recuperation, but you don't get any paddles on the back of the steering wheel, meaning you can basically have it in the regular setting in drive. You can increase it with B, but you don't have that option of going through different stages of regen as you're driving, as you would do on some other electric vehicles, which, well, maybe not everyone uses it, but there are people that can use that, and it can be quite beneficial for people on certain driving routes depending on where exactly they live. Personally, I do like using it on some cars because you don't always want to have all the regen. Equally, it is also nice to be able to turn that off and have a sail mode. But you always have to press that B button on or off if you want to do it, and having to take your hands off the wheel every time is a little bit annoying, and this probably means you're less likely to end up using it. So, you know, that's the way Opel has decided to go with the Astra. It's not exactly going to be a deal breaker for people, but it does have a lot of other features. The new latest version of its adaptive cruise control does work relatively well most of the time. In heavy stop-start traffic, we feel that it's a little bit over eager on the brakes, and it could be a little bit smoother, but that's really the only thing. The rest of the time it works very, very well. It's very quick to pick up any speed limit changes, and it notifies you immediately on the dashboard, and you can just press the OK button to then change down to that different speed limit that you're now passing through. So that's pretty good. Also, in terms of its lane keeping aids, they also work quite well. You don't really get that kind of pogoing or bouncing between the lines as you do with some other cars that have these kind of systems. The brake pedal itself also has a nice progressive and positive feel to it, something that was missing when we drove the plug-in hybrid Astra. So it's good that Opel has got this thing figured out on the Astra Electric. Even when you get out of town and get up to higher speeds, the Astra loses none of its refinement. I'm driving along here at 100 kilometers an hour on a dual carriageway, and it is super quiet inside. There's the faintest rumble of tire noise and road noise, but that's it. No electric powertrain noise coming through the cabin, and next to no wind noise even around the mirrors. Equally impressive is how it uses its energy at higher speeds, especially on a dual carriageway or motorway like this when you are constantly draining the battery. Now, if you're in any way smart in how you drive, you will periodically lift off and coast a little bit as you come up against traffic. But even still, at a steady cruise, this is not using a huge amount of energy to maintain its speed and to cover longer distances. And that's a really big plus to the fact that this car has very good aerodynamics. It's a lower car and has, as I've mentioned already, has less weight than many other electric vehicles. Okay, we're sitting at a steady 100 kilometers an hour now, and I'm using just under 14 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That's not too bad. Even the slightest little lift on the accelerator pedal sees that figure drop down into single digits too. So you can be relatively confident that this is going to be able to cover a fairly good long distance on a dual carriageway or on a motorway using a single battery charge. As ever, conditions do vary. Right now we're driving on a nice warm summer's day in June, so that does help it. But overall, this has done very well on our initial first impression of what it's like at higher speeds on longer runs. But really what makes the Astra seem like such a sensible car is that battery and that weight combination. Yeah, 54 kilowatt hours is more than enough for what most people are ever going to need, especially given the fact that it can AC charge at 11 kilowatts, and you've also got rapid charging that can get from 0 to 80% in as little as 30 minutes, provided you've got a fast enough charger. So really, it's kind of the EV that covers a lot of bases for a lot of people. And the fact that it's also proving to be as efficient as it claims, sometimes even more so, makes it that bit more appealing than one of the usual electric SUVs. It's also worth bearing in mind that Opel is also going to offer this as a sports tourer or an estate body style. So if you do need to carry a little bit more luggage, you're going to have that option too. Well, that's our first drive of the Opel Astra Electric. It's a car that has a lot of the right ingredients. The fact that it's got a heat pump as standard, an 11 kilowatt AC charging, all those things make it a lot better than some other electric cars. But also a big part of this car is the fact that it's not an SUV, it weighs less, that makes it more efficient. And in most cases around the city today, we saw energy consumption that was actually better than what Opel claims in its combined cycle. So that's another big plus to have as well. If you're going to be sticking to mainly urban routes, this is absolutely a car that you should be considering. If you want to know more about the car, head over to our website. It's CompleteCar.ie. You'll find it linked in the description below, and it's a great resource for finding your next new car. If you've watched the video so far and you've enjoyed it, please do give it a thumbs up, but more importantly, tell us what you think about it in the comments below, because your feedback is very important to us. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.